All right, for this week's lab, we're going to talk about the impacts of forest harvesting on forest soils. So we're going to talk about skid trails, haul roads, log landings, and the actual harvest area and how they impact soils. We're going to talk about 4 different things. So we're going to talk about soil infiltration, and we're going to use a single ring infiltrometer to measure infiltration into the soil. So that's going to be a rate, centimeters per hour, of how quick the water goes into the soil. We're going to talk about soil bulk density, and for that we're going to use a slide hammer to take a soil core. If you're in the class, you've heard about the core method, the clod method, and then the 3D scanning method. This is going to be the core method, where we actually take a known volume of soil and then we take it back to the lab, oven dry it, and weigh it. And then the last thing we're going to talk about, well, 2 other things. We're going to talk about soil penetration. And this is just a measure of how much pressure it takes to push into the soil. So there'll be different size cones, a small cone for more compacted soils, and then a broader cone for real loose soils, so your sandier type soils. This is just called a Dickie-John penetrometer. The name of it's right there. It's called a penetrometer though. All right, so the first place we're going to visit is what we call the log landing, and that's where we pile up all the logs. This is kind of a fake log landing. This is actually my yard. So this is just some pine that we stacked up here, but what it's going to be is the area that all the logs, when they do the harvest, they bring them back to what's called the log landing. So we're going to have all that material. There's a lot of compaction that goes on here. There's all the logs are being stacked up. The skidders are constantly coming and going to this one concentrated area. So we're going to expect a lot of compaction. We're going to expect slow infiltration, high bulk density, high penetration resistance. And we'll look at soil moisture also. I didn't talk about that earlier, but we're just going to take a clod of soil, take it back to the lab, oven dry it, and weigh it. All right, so this part of the video we're going to talk about infiltration, and this is just a stainless steel ring. We know the volume or the area of this ring, so we can drive this into the ground. We usually insert it about 2 inches into the soil, and we'll just do that. There's a root right here, so we'll wiggle this into the soil, get it in there about 2 inches. So there's 2 ways we can do this. We can either use, we know the area of this circle, so we can use 398 milliliters of water and pour it in there, and what that's going to represent is 1 inch of rainfall. The other way we can do it is just take a measuring device, put it into the ring, and then we need a stopwatch, and then we will pour water into here. We don't want it to splash directly on the surface. We'd start our stopwatch and we'll watch the water infiltrate into the soil. So we'd start a timer, watch the water go down, and we would calculate a rate in terms of centimeters per hour for how quick that water goes into the soil. So typically what we will do is go set up about 3 or 4 of these in each land use. So here at the log landing, we'd have 3 or 4. We'd have 3 or 4 in the harvest, the skid trail, and all those areas, and then we would allow those to infiltrate, because it may take up to an hour depending on what the soil texture is and the antecedent moisture conditions. So all we're doing here is take the initial measurement, come back in 30 minutes, see how dry that is, and see how much water infiltrated. So this is when infiltration is complete. What you're looking for is the soil surface just coming to a glisten, where you don't see a lot of standing water, but it's kind of glistening in the sunlight. So you'll just see that shiny reflection on top of the surface. So this is all infiltrated through here. And so you would record the time, how much time it took, and convert that like inches or centimeters per hour, whatever unit length per time. All right, so now we're going to talk about penetration resistance. If you look at this, this is measured in PSI and kilopascals, the different units on this penetrometer. So that's pounds per square inch. If you look at the stainless steel rod, you've got increments on here. I think that each one's 10 centimeters. And then, like I said, there's two different cone sizes. You can see this small cone and then a little bit bigger cone that you can screw onto the tip. That would be for sandier soils. We're gonna keep the clay soil tip on there for now. And the way this works, it's just got this bicycle handle, and you just push it into the soil, and you'll watch the reading go up until whatever depth you want to read it. So if you know your A horizon is this 20 centimeters, we would just read every 20 centimeters. Just push it in and watch the dial go up. So right there, we're at about 150, 200, getting into the yellow. It's pretty dense, right at the edge of the driveway, up to 300 getting down into that B horizon. So that's penetration resistance. When we take these measurements, they're real simple to take. So we typically take at least 10 of them per site. So you're gonna see in your report that we'll probably have 10 penetration resistant readings that you want to average, and report that average for each land use. So the next thing we're going to measure is bulk density. This is the core method. So this is a slide hammer that will drive this core down into the soil. And when you take this apart, you unscrew the core and there'll be a sleeve inside of it that is a known volume. So we know the volume of this sleeve. That's our bulk density sample. So we get a soil sample in there. We're going to shave the sides of it off, take that core out, put it in a paper bag, and take it back to the lab and weigh it. So bulk density, as you remember, is the volume of soil. It's the mass over the volume of soil. So if we know that volume and we know the mass, we can get grams per cubic centimeter of soil. Soils typically range, a high bulk density would be like 1.8, and a real low bulk density would be around 1. So we probably expect our soil bulk densities here around 1.2, 1.3 in undisturbed conditions with our soil textures. Sandier textures tend to have higher bulk density because they have lower porosity. If you had a clay soil, you have higher porosity, so you typically have a lower bulk density. Organic matter is going to influence it as well. So the more organic matter you have, the lower your bulk density will be. So at this compacted log landing here, this fake log landing we're going to expect a higher bulk density because of all the traffic in that area. Same thing with your log roads, your haul roads, and your skid trails, because most of your compaction happens within the first 2 passes of the equipment. So if the equipment goes in, comes out, that's when about 90% of your compaction has occurred. So now we're going to take the bulk density core. We want to clear a spot off. We got the organic matter off the surface. We're down to bare mineral soil. All you do is take this, set it on there, and drive it in, and you're going to notice there's going to be a difference in the sound and the feel. Right there we hit a different sound, and we know our core is full. If we continue to hammer this thing in, what we'll do is compact that core and increase the bulk density. So we're going to get a fake bulk density. So you kind of wiggle this thing back and forth, pop it out of the soil, unscrew it. You've got your core in there. You can see it's flush on this end. So you get your knife out and you'll shave this core to where it's flush on both sides. So we have a known volume, and then we'll take that back to the lab and oven dry that at 65 degrees Celsius for 24 hours to get the weight of it. So we'll get an oven dry weight over this known volume, and I'm going to give you that data because you can have different size cores. This is like a 2-inch core here. We got 3-inch, 4-inch cores. The one we first showed you was a 6-inch core. So depending on what depth you want to record bulk density at, you have different size cores. So we'll just pop that out, and what you typically see is a real platy structure in an area that's highly trafficked, and this is not super platy here, but you can see some of the orange modeling and the light gray, those redoxymorphic features we've talked about. Got a lot of mycorrhizae in here. That's an ectomycorrhizae covering some of the roots. It's associated with these pine trees in here. So then there's some gravel from the driveway, and it is a little platy here. You can see the horizontal plates in that soil. So this has been compacted. It's only 3 feet off the driveway, so I run a tractor through here quite a bit, so I don't doubt that it is compacted. So this is what the harvested area would look like. Obviously, if you have a pine plantation like this, a logger is going to come in and they're going to cut with a feller buncher in a row. So they would take out every single tree. It would be a clear-cut harvest in most pine situations. If we flipped over to a hardwood, obviously we go in and do single tree selections for the most part. Sometimes we're going to do shelter woods or even a clear cut in some situations, but typically it's go in, get a tree, cable it out, or go in with the actual skidder to get the tree and pull it out. So think about the number of passes. If you're setting up one of these for harvest in the future, think about how many passes you got to make. Think about what slopes you're on, because you don't want to create more erosion. So all right, this is what your typical skid trail is going to look like. You can see the ruts coming through here. So this is where you made several passes coming in and out of here hauling logs. So this could be on top of a ridge where you cable the logs up to this skid trail, and this is where the main traffic is coming out of the woods. The haul roads are going to be what's leaving the woods off the property to the main road. So that's going to be a little bit different situation. Out west and east, they'll typically gravel those haul roads, where these skid trails are just the earthen skid trails where they just come in. And they'll come in, and some of those BMPs we talked about the other day where you have water bars, you're going to come back and put water bars in. You're going to seed it. You can seed your log landings. So you want to leave the site vegetated and in the best condition you can before you leave it. It's a little bit more on wood products. This is loblolly pine. These are typically grown on real crappy soils, so poor nutrient quality. This property of mine is actually on an old mine spoil, or adjacent to some surface mines. So there's some mining, some shale and some stuff at the surface of the soil in this area. So they did reclaim it, but a lot of the things they planted back, as you can see over there, that's all loblolly pine. But I've been milling these off the property, so you get something that takes a lot of, or very little nutrients to grow. So a loblolly pine, and then on the contrary, you got all this black walnut. I cut these slabs this weekend, and this takes a very high quality site. So you got pretty well drained soils to grow this black walnut like this. So some of the things you got to think about if you're gonna plant a walnut plantation or something in hopes that you're gonna retire on it, you know, when you're 60 years old, you got to have the right site to do that. You're not going to come in and just plant walnut here on my property and expect it to grow. So this came from a pretty well drained site. You can see the persimmon here. It's kind of buggy, it doesn't look real good, but there's a pretty good stack of walnuts, some real pretty crotch log right there that's going to make a nice table for somebody. It's a 4-inch slab, and then there's a lot of 2-inch crotch slabs too that I cut out of it. But this stuff requires very well drained soil. So soils are important for growing the timber that you know, whatever your goals are as a landowner. You can't just pick and choose what you want to grow. You got to make sure it's suitable for that site. So this site's not suitable for much. Here's the beauty of living out in the country. About 150 yards out the back door. growing by a big sweet gum.
What you doing? Is it comfy under there? Okay.
Here's my big rooster that got chewed on by a fox the other day. He's got a messed up neck. He doesn't like to stand up. I think he got drug off by a fox. Here's our egg incubator. They're supposed to hatch today, and I can see one right there starting to poke through. So we got some replacements coming for that rooster that got ganked by the fox out there. Should be hatching today. Also got some ducks over here that are sitting in the incubator. They should be hatching in 7 days after the chickens. So 21 days for a chicken, 28 days for a duck. Bees aren't very active today. It's kind of cold out, but they're coming in and out. They need a little drink of water. Need some sugar water. Should be lots of honey in that hive. Got a little wood products demonstration here. Got a little Tiger King 200-year-old post oak floating shelves that we're putting together here. So that'll go on the wall and slide in there. It'll just look like a shelf floating on the wall.